The dust storm hit Broken Creek just after sunset, turning the sky the color of dried blood. Sarah Mitchell stumbled through the howling wind, her threadbare shawl doing nothing against the stinging sand. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago, replaced by a hollow ache that made her vision swim. The small leather pouch at her hip held nothing but lint and a tarnished copper ring, her mother's last gift before fever took her 3 weeks past. Through the amber haze, she spotted the white steeple of St. Matthew's Church. Her boots, more whole than leather, barely protected her bleeding feet as she staggered up the wooden steps. The door groaned open, and she collapsed onto the cool floor inside, gasping. Before I continue with Sarah's desperate journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Please let me know in the comments. "Lord have mercy," came a woman's voice. Sarah forced her eyes open to see a gray-haired woman in a simple dress kneeling beside her. "Child, when did you last eat?" "Tuesday, ma'am," Sarah whispered. "I think it was Tuesday." The woman, Mrs. Henley, the minister's wife, helped her to a pew and brought water. Sarah drank slowly, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the cup. "My husband's away visiting the mining camps," Mrs. Henley said softly. "Won't be back until morning. But we'll get some food in you, and you can sleep in the rectory tonight." Sarah's eyes burned with tears. "I have this." She fumbled with the pouch, pulling out her mother's ring. "It's copper, but it's all I—" "Put that away." Mrs. Henley's tone was gentle but firm. "The church doesn't trade charity for trinkets. You need help, and we give it. That's what the Lord commands." But Sarah knew charity had limits. She'd learned that in the 4 towns she'd passed through since her mother died. Kindness lasted a day, maybe 2, before questions came. "Where's your family? Why are you alone?" A girl of 19 had no business wandering without protection. The suggestions always followed. Work at the saloon, find a husband, move along. Mrs. Henley brought bread and cheese, and Sarah ate slowly, forcing herself not to devour it like an animal. Through the window, she watched the storm rage, dust devils dancing in the street like demons. "Storms brought in some stranded travelers," Mrs. Henley said, following her gaze. "Railroad men, mostly. They're staying at the hotel, waiting for the tracks to clear." She paused. "There's a man among them, Mr. Janison Cross. He owns the railroad, built most of the lines through this territory." Sarah barely heard her. She was focused on the warmth in her belly, the first comfort she'd felt in weeks. The church door banged open. Both women jumped as a tall figure stepped inside, shaking dust from his long coat. Even in the dim lamplight, Sarah could see he was a man who commanded attention. Broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, he moved with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. "Mrs. Henley," he said, his voice deep and measured, "forgive the intrusion. The hotel's overflowing, and I saw your light." "Mr. Cross," Mrs. Henley stood quickly. "Of course, you're welcome here." His gray eyes swept the room and landed on Sarah. She felt pinned by that gaze, like he could see through her skin to the desperation beneath. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. "I don't mean to interrupt," he said, though he made no move to leave. He was perhaps 32, with a strong jaw and hands that looked more accustomed to work than his expensive suit suggested. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge that made Sarah's heart race. "This is Miss Sarah Mitchell," Mrs. Henley said. "She's seeking shelter from the storm." "Just Sarah," she corrected quietly. "I'm nobody's miss." Something flickered in Cross's expression. Surprise, maybe? Or interest? He removed his hat, revealing more of his face. Handsome, but weathered. A man who'd seen trouble and walked through it. "Mr. Cross is a railroad owner," Mrs. Henley continued. "He's brought the line all the way through to Silver Junction." "The railroad changes everything," Cross said, still watching Sarah. "Brings civilization, opportunity. A person with nothing can become something." Sarah's fingers tightened on the cup. She heard the unspoken words, "A person like you." "I'm sure it does," she said carefully. "For those with means to take advantage." His mouth curved slightly. "You think opportunity requires money? I think it requires not starving." Mrs. Henley made a small noise of disapproval, but Cross laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised Sarah. "Fair point," he said. He moved closer, and Sarah caught the scent of leather and tobacco, and something else. Something clean like pine. "Where are you headed?" "Anywhere there's work." She lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness even though exhaustion pulled at her bones. "I can cook, clean, mend. I'm strong." "I can see that." His gaze traveled over her face, not lecherous, but assessing. "Takes strength to admit need. Most people would rather starve than ask for help. I'm not asking. I'm offering trade." "What do you have to trade?" She pulled out the ring again, hating how desperate the gesture looked. "It's not much, but—" "That's not what I asked." Cross's voice cut through her words like a blade. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I asked what you have to trade. Not what's in your pocket, but what's in you." Sarah's breath caught. No one had asked her that before. They saw a hungry girl, a problem to be solved or avoided, but Cross looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Skills, determination, will." He ticked off each word like it mattered. "Those are worth more than copper." Mrs. Henley cleared her throat. "Mr. Cross, perhaps this conversation should wait until morning." "I need a wife," he said abruptly. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Sarah stared at him, certain she'd misheard through the howling wind. "I beg your pardon?" Mrs. Henley's voice rose. Cross never looked away from Sarah. "The railroad board requires it. Says a man in my position needs a respectable home, a family foundation. I've spent 5 years building this line, and they're threatening to replace me if I don't settle down." His jaw tightened. "I won't lose what I've built over their archaic requirements." "So you propose to the first desperate woman you find?" Sarah's voice shook with anger or fear. She couldn't tell which. How generous. "I propose to a woman who understands necessity." He pulled something from his inner pocket, a railroad ticket. "This goes to San Francisco. First-class accommodation, enough money to start fresh, anywhere you choose." He set it on the pew beside her. "Or you can stay. Marry me. You'll have security, a home, respect. I'll have my position secured." "That's insane," Sarah breathed. "It's practical." Cross's tone was matter-of-fact, but something flickered in his eyes, a crack in the armor. "I'm not offering romance. I'm offering survival. You need it. I need it. We make a deal. Mrs. Henley stepped between them. "Mr. Cross, this is highly irregular. Everything about the frontier is irregular, ma'am." He finally looked away from Sarah, and she felt like she could breathe again. "I'm not asking her to decide tonight. The storm will last until morning. She can think about it." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But understand this, Miss Sarah, who's nobody's miss. I don't make this offer lightly. I'm offering a partnership, not ownership. You'd be my wife in name and law, with all the protection that brings. What you make of that arrangement, beyond the legal requirement, is your choice." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that made Sarah shiver. Mrs. Henley sank onto the pew. "Lord, preserve us. That man is either mad or desperate." "Both," Sarah said quietly. She picked up the ticket, running her fingers over the embossed letters. San Francisco, a new life, freedom, or a different kind of cage wrapped in expensive paper. She thought of her mother's last words. "Be smart, Sarah. Don't confuse kindness with love, but don't be too proud to accept help when it's real." Was this help? Or exploitation dressed in respectability? "What should I do?" she asked. Mrs. Henley took her hand. "Only you can answer that, child. But I'll tell you this. Jameson Cross is known as a hard man, but a fair one. He keeps his word. If he offers protection, he'll provide it." Sarah lay awake that night in the rectory's small guest room, listening to the wind scream. The ticket sat on the nightstand, glowing faintly in the moonlight that filtered through the storm. Freedom called from that piece of paper. But freedom to do what? Arrive in a strange city with no money, no connections, no family? How long before she was right back here, starving and desperate? At least if she married Cross, she'd have a name, a place. Time to figure out what came next. "You're not property. You're a person," her mother's voice echoed in her memory. But what good was being a person if you couldn't survive? By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the town coated in red dust that glowed in the sunrise. Sarah washed her face with the basin water Mrs. Henley had provided, braided her long brown hair, and put on the only other dress she owned, a faded blue cotton that had been her mother's. She found Cross at the hotel dining room, eating breakfast alone while other railroad men clustered at nearby tables. They fell silent when she entered, all eyes tracking her movement. She lifted her chin and walked straight to his table. "I have conditions," she said without preamble. Cross looked up from his eggs, showing no surprise. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." She did, ignoring the whispers around them. Up close in daylight, she could see he hadn't slept much either. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and stubble roughened his jaw. "Speak," he said. "I keep my name, Sarah Cross, not just Mrs. Jameson Cross. I'm a person, not an acquisition." "Agreed. I want to learn. Numbers, writing, how the railroad works. I won't be decorative. I expected nothing less. And if either of us becomes dissatisfied, we discuss options. I won't be trapped." He set down his fork. "Nor will I. But understand, I don't enter into agreements I plan to break. If we do this, I intend it to last." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You could find someone educated, connected, beautiful." "I'm not looking for beautiful. I'm looking for strong." His gray eyes held hers. "Last night, you could have taken that ticket and run. Instead, you came here to negotiate. That tells me more than any finishing school diploma." Sarah's throat tightened. "You don't know me." "I know enough." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside sat a simple gold band with a small diamond. This was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to a woman worth the weight of it. He closed the box. You're not property, Sarah. You're a person worth saving. And maybe, if I'm lucky, you'll think I'm worth saving too. The words hit her like a physical blow. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart hammer against her ribs. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. His admission, raw and honest, sealed something between them. But I'd rather be terrified together than alone. She thought of the empty road behind her, the endless hunger, the cold certainty that she'd die before winter. Then she thought of this man, this stranger who looked at her like she mattered. Together, she repeated, testing the word. Together. She held out her hand. Then I accept. His hand engulfed hers, warm and solid and real. We'll marry today. Get you settled in the house before I have to leave for Silver Junction tomorrow. Tomorrow? Her stomach dropped. Just for a week. Railroad business. He squeezed her hand. I know this is fast, but I promise you, Sarah, I keep my word. The ceremony happened at noon, conducted by the minister in the same church where she'd collapsed the night before. Mrs. Henley cried. The few witnesses cross-rounded up, its foreman and 2 railroad engineers, looked bewildered, but said nothing. Sarah wore her mother's blue dress and held a bouquet of dusty wildflowers someone had scrounged up. Cross wore a dark suit that made him look even more intimidating. When the minister asked if she took this man, she looked into his gray eyes and saw something she hadn't expected. Hope. I do, she said. His mouth curved slightly. I do. The ring slid under her finger, heavier than she'd imagined. When Cross lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, she felt the gesture through her entire body. A claim and a promise wrapped together. You can kiss your bride, the minister said awkwardly. Cross looked at her, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. He leaned in, and his lips brushed hers. Gentle, quick, respectful. But even that brief contact sent heat racing through her veins. Mrs. Cross, he murmured against her mouth. Sarah Cross, she corrected. He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Sarah Cross. The house shocked her. 2 stories of whitewashed wood on the edge of town, with a wraparound porch and glass windows that caught the afternoon sun. Inside, furniture that looked like it belonged in a catalog, rugs that muffled footsteps, a kitchen twice the size of any she'd seen. This is mine? She breathed. Ours. Cross set her small bundle, everything she owned, on a chair. I'm not here much. The railroad keeps me traveling. But when I am, this is home. He showed her through the rooms, his hand occasionally brushing the small of her back to guide her. The master bedroom made her freeze. 1 bed. Large, covered in a quilt that looked handmade. I can sleep in the guest room, Cross said immediately, until you're comfortable. Relief and something else, disappointment, flickered through her. Thank you. Sarah. He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. I meant what I said. You're not property. This marriage is legal. But what happens between us, that's something we build. Or don't. Your choice. And if I never... She couldn't finish the question. Then we have a partnership of respect and convenience. That's more than most marriages start with. His thumb brushed her collarbone, a whisper of touch that made her shiver. But I hope, in time, you might want more, because I think I already do. The honesty in his voice made her ache. I don't know how to be a wife. I don't know how to be a husband. We'll figure it out. He stepped back, giving her space. I have to leave at dawn tomorrow. My foreman, Marcus, will check on you. Mrs. Henley said she'd visit. You're not alone. But she would be. The thought terrified her more than she wanted to admit. That night, she lay in the big bed alone, listening to Cross move around in the guest room down the hall. The sheets smelled like lavender and felt like heaven against her skin. Her stomach was full. She was clean, warm, safe. So why did she feel so empty? A soft knock made her sit up. Sarah, can I come in? Yes. Cross entered carrying a lamp, still dressed in his trousers and undershirt. In the soft light, she could see the muscles of his arms, the breadth of his chest. Her mouth went dry. Can't sleep, he said. Thought maybe you couldn't either. I'm not used to. She gestured at the room. Any of this. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep distance between them. Tell me about your mother. The question surprised her. For the next hour she talked, about her mother's laugh, her skill with healing herbs, the way she'd sung while cooking. Cross listened, asking questions, his attention complete and undivided. When she finally fell silent, she realized she was crying. She sounds remarkable, Cross said softly, like her daughter. You don't know that. I know you haven't given up. That's remarkable enough. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Get some sleep, Sarah. Tomorrow starts a new chapter. He stood to leave, but she caught his hand. Stay, just until I fall asleep. Something vulnerable flashed across his face. Are you sure? She nodded. He settled onto the bed, above the covers, his back against the headboard. She curled on her side, her hand still linked with his, and closed her eyes. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a steady rhythm that lulled her toward sleep. Just before darkness took her, she heard him whisper, "Thank you for saying yes." She woke to find him gone, but a note on his pillow. Back in 7 days. Supplies in the kitchen. Money in the desk drawer. If you need anything, Marcus knows how to find me. You're safe here. Jay. Sarah spent the week learning to inhabit her new life. Mrs. Henley taught her to cook more than basic fare. Marcus's wife, Elena, showed her around town, introducing her as Mrs. Cross with a pride that made Sarah stand taller. She explored every corner of the house, read the books in Cross's study, practiced writing numbers in the ledger she found. On the 5th day, she rode out to where the railroad line was being built. Her first time on a horse, arranged by Marcus, who patiently taught her the basics. She watched men laying tracks under the brutal sun, their shirts soaked with sweat, and understood something about the man she'd married. He'd built this with his own hands before he'd earned the right to direct it from afar. On the 7th day, she was baking bread when the front door opened. Cross stepped in, dust-covered and exhausted, and stopped dead at the sight of her in his kitchen, flour on her cheek, smiling. "Welcome home," she said. His face transformed. He crossed the room in 3 strides, swept her into his arms, and buried his face in her hair. "I missed you," he breathed. "God, I missed you." She wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the solidity of him, the truth of his words in the way he held her. "I missed you too." He pulled back just enough to see her face. "Really? Really?" She touched his jaw, feeling stubble rasp against her palm. "The house was too quiet without you. I brought you something." He released her reluctantly and pulled a package from his coat. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was a book, a lady's guide to business management. Sarah laughed. You remembered. I remember everything you say. He watched her thumb through the pages, his expression soft. I want you to understand the railroad. Not because you have to, but because you want to learn. I thought this might help. Thank you. She set the book carefully on the table. I explored the house, found your study. His eyebrows rose. And? You have terrible handwriting, and your filing system makes no sense. She smiled at his surprised laugh. I reorganized it. Hope you don't mind. Mind? He caught her waist, pulling her close again. Sarah, this is your home. Do whatever you want. I want... Trailed off, suddenly shy. His hands were warm through her dress, his body solid against hers. She could feel his heartbeat, fast and strong. Tell me, he murmured. I want to know you. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Really know you, not just the arrangement we made. What do you want to know? Everything. Over dinner, the bread she'd baked, plus stew she'd learned from Mrs. Henley. He told her about growing up poor in Chicago, his father's death when he was 12, working his way up from laying track to surveying to engineering to ownership, about the scar over his eye earned in a bar fight when he was 20 and stupid, about his mother's faith that he'd be something, her death 2 years ago, his regret that she hadn't lived to see what he'd built. And the marriage requirement, Sarah asked. Is that really from the board? Cross's jaw tightened. Partly. They wanted stability, respectability. But mostly, he looked down at his plate. I was tired of being alone. Building empires is empty when there's no one to share them with. Is that all I am? Someone to fill empty space? No. His gaze snapped to hers, fierce. You're someone who makes me want to come home. That's different. Her breath caught. Jameson? Jamie, he interrupted. My mother called me Jamie. You can too if you want. Jamie. The name felt intimate on her tongue. I'm scared of disappointing you. Impossible. He reached across the table, lacing his fingers with hers. You could burn this house down and I'd just be grateful you escaped. She laughed, but it turned into something like a sob. Why are you so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness. He stood, came around the table, and knelt beside her chair, so they were eye level. Sarah, I know we started this as a transaction, but somewhere between you walking into that hotel and me riding home today, it became real for me. You became real. If you never feel the same, I'll live with that. But I need you to know, you're not just my wife on paper. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing before I sleep. She touched his face with shaking hands. I think about you too. Yeah? His voice roughened. All the time. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. It terrifies me. Me too. His hands cupped her face. Can I kiss you? Really kiss you? Please. His mouth met hers, and this time there was nothing brief or respectful about it. He kissed her like he'd been starving for it, his lips warm and demanding. She gasped, and he deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair while the other gripped her waist. She'd never been kissed like this, like she was necessary, precious, wanted. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had darkened to smoke. Sarah, don't apologize, she whispered. I was going to say we should slow down. What if I don't want to? He groaned. You're killing me. Good. She kissed him again, bolder now, and felt his control snap. He lifted her from the chair, still kissing her, and carried her toward the stairs. Tell me to stop, he said against her mouth. If you want to stop, Tell me. I don't want to stop. Her hands fisted in his shirt. I want to feel alive, with you. He took the stairs 2 at a time. In the bedroom, he set her down gently on the bed, his hands already working the buttons of her dress. We go slow, he said, his voice gravelly. If anything hurts, you'll stop. I know. She pulled him down to her. I trust you. That's. He kissed her jaw, her throat, the hollow of her collarbone. That's everything, Sarah. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. His face buried in her hair, her name on his lips like a prayer. After, he held her close, their bodies tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her ear. Are you all right? He asked quietly. More than all right. She kissed his chest, tasting salt. Jamie? I think I'm falling in love with you. His arms tightened around her. Thank God, because I'm already there. The next weeks blurred together in a haze of happiness Sarah had never imagined. Jamie taught her to ride properly, his hands steady on her waist as he lifted her into the saddle. She taught herself his business, poring over the ledgers and maps until she could discuss routes and costs with intelligence. They made love often, in their bed, once scandalously in his study, another time in the barn during a rainstorm. But happiness, Sarah learned, made her a target. The trouble started with whispers. She heard them at the general store, saw the looks from railroad board members' wives. Who does she think she is? An orphan playing at being quality. He married her for convenience, nothing more. Then came the letters, anonymous, vicious, describing in detail what would happen to upstart girls who forgot their place. Jamie burned them when she showed him, his face white with fury. Ignore them, he said. Jealous people with small lives. But she couldn't ignore the man who stepped into her path one afternoon as she walked home from the mercantile. Tall, blonde, with cold blue eyes and a smile that made her skin crawl. Mrs. Cross, he said, tipping his hat. Or should I say, the former Miss Nobody? Excuse me. She tried to step around him, but he blocked her. Horace Beckham. He extended a hand she didn't take. I own the stage line your husband is trying to put out of business with his railroad. That's business. It has nothing to do with me. Doesn't it? He leaned closer, and she smelled whiskey on his breath. See, I'm thinking a man who marries trash from a church floor isn't thinking clearly. Might be convinced to make different business decisions if the right pressure were applied. Fear spiked through her, but she lifted her chin. Threaten me again, and I'll tell my husband. Tell him! Beckham's smile widened. But ask yourself, how long will he keep defending damaged goods? Once the shine wears off his charity case? He walked away, leaving her shaking. She didn't tell Jamie that night, or the next. The words burrowed into her brain like poison. Charity case. Damaged goods. Nobody. A week later, Jamie announced he had to go to Silver Junction for 2 weeks. Problems with a bridge construction. Come with me, he urged. I don't want to be apart that long. I should stay, Sarah said, trying to sound casual. Learn more about the town. Make connections. Sarah, he cupped her face. What's wrong? Nothing. She kissed him, hard, trying to make him forget the question. I'm fine, just nervous without you. 2 weeks, he promised. Then I'm back, and Marcus will be here if you need anything. She watched him ride out at dawn, fear churning in her stomach. She told herself she was being silly. Beckham was all talk. Nothing would happen. She was wrong. 3 days after Jamie left, she woke to the smell of smoke. She stumbled out of bed, coughing, and saw flames licking up the curtains in the study. Someone had thrown a torch through the window. She screamed for help, grabbed the water bucket from the kitchen, and fought the fire with everything she had. Neighbors came running, and together they doused the flames before they spread beyond the one room. But the damage was done. Charred walls, destroyed books, all of Jamie's maps and plans for the new railway extension turned to ash. "Who would do this?" Mrs. Henley asked, her face soot-streaked. Sarah knew. The note tied to the torch confirmed it. "Tell your husband to sell, or next time it's more than property that burns." She sent word to Jamie immediately, but knew it would take a day to reach him. Another day at least before he could return. In the meantime, she wasn't helpless. She found Marcus at the worksite. "I need you to teach me to shoot." He blinked. "Ma'am? Now, please." To his credit, he didn't argue. By sunset, she could hit a target at 20 yards. Not well, but well enough to defend herself. Marcus stationed 2 men to watch the house, but Sarah barely slept. The gun Jamie kept in his nightstand, now under her pillow. The next day, she rode to Beckham's office, Marcus trailing protectively behind despite her protests. Beckham looked up from his desk with false surprise. "Mrs. Cross, what a pleasant—" "You burned my house." Her voice didn't shake. "You threatened me. Now I'm telling you what's going to happen." He laughed. "You're telling me? Jamie will be back tomorrow. When he finds out what you did, he'll destroy you. Not with violence. He doesn't need it. He'll undercut your stage prices until you're bankrupt. Buy your routes out from under you. Turn your drivers to his side with better pay. You'll lose everything." Big words from a girl who was begging for scraps a month ago. That girl learned something. Sarah leaned over his desk, her hands flat on the surface. She learned that strength isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to quit. You tried to scare me into nothing. Instead, you made me furious. And a furious woman with a powerful husband is your worst nightmare. Beckham's smile faded. "You threatening me? I'm promising you. Touch me or mine again, and I'll make it my life's work to see you ruined." She straightened. "And if you think Jamie will stop me, you don't understand our marriage. He'll help." She turned on her heel and walked out, shaking but triumphant. Marcus caught up with her outside, his eyes wide. "Mrs. Cross, that was reckless, I know." She swung into her saddle with the ease of recent practice. "But I'm tired of being afraid." Jamie arrived home that night, hours earlier than expected, his horse lathered from hard riding. He found Sarah in the kitchen, trying to scrub soot stains from her hands, and pulled her into his arms so hard she gasped. "Are you hurt?" His hands roamed over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine. The house is fine, mostly. Some damage to the study." "Fuck the study." His voice cracked. "Sarah, when I got your message, He buried his face in her hair. "I can't lose you." "You won't." She held him tight, feeling him shake. "I handled it." He pulled back, confused. "What?" She told him everything. The fire, learning to shoot, confronting Beckham. With every word, his expression shifted from fear to anger to something like pride. "You went to his office?" Jamie demanded. "I couldn't just wait and do nothing. You could have been killed." "So could you, every time you ride between towns or inspect a worksite." She grabbed his shirt front. "I'm your wife, Jamie, your partner. That means I fight too." He stared at her for a long moment, then kissed her fiercely. "You're incredible," he breathed against her mouth. "Terrifying and incredible. Is that a problem?" "No." He kissed her again. "God, no. But we're dealing with Beckham together." "Together," she agreed. They went to the sheriff the next morning with evidence. The note, witness testimony about Beckham's threats, a signed statement from one of his drivers who'd been ordered to scare the crosswoman. The sheriff arrested Beckham by noon. By evening, Jamie had filed suit to acquire Beckham's bankrupt stage line at auction. Ruthless, Sarah murmured as they watched Beckham being led away in chains. You taught me that. Jamie pulled her close. Scared the hell out of me. But you taught me that a marriage of equals is stronger than anything. That night, as they lay tangled together in their repaired bedroom, Jamie had hired contractors to fix the damage within days. Sarah traced the scar over his eye. Tell me about your worst moment, she said. Before we met. He was quiet for a long time. 5 years ago, I lost half my crew in a bridge collapse. Bad engineering, my fault. 15 men died. Her hand stilled. Jamie, I almost quit, sold everything, ran away. His voice roughened. But my mother told me the measure of a man isn't avoiding mistakes. It's what he does after. So I learned, hired better engineers, implemented safety protocols, never cut corners again. Built something better from the ashes. Like us, Sarah whispered. Yeah, he kissed her palm. Like us. You were running from your past. I was buried in mine. We found each other and built something new. I love you, she said, the words easier now. Not because you saved me, because you saw me when I was invisible. I love you because you refused to stay invisible. He rolled her beneath him, his body covering hers. You fought for yourself, then for us. That's the woman I married. They made love slowly, savoring each touch, each whispered promise. Afterward, Sarah lay awake listening to his heartbeat, marveling at how her life had changed. 2 months ago, she'd been starving. Now she was full, of food, of purpose, of love. The railroad expansion succeeded. With Beckham gone, resistance crumbled. The line to Silver Junction opened ahead of schedule, bringing prosperity to every town along the route. Sarah worked beside Jamie, learning the business until she could negotiate contracts and manage accounts with the same skill he'd spent years acquiring. A year after their wedding, they stood on a platform watching the first official train pull into Broken Creek. The same church where they'd married stood behind them, newly painted with funds Jamie had donated. Mrs. Henley waved from the crowd. He took his hand on, feels like a lifetime ago, Sarah said. It was a lifetime. Jamie pulled her close, his hand resting on the slight swell of her belly. A better one. An orphan sought shelter in a church on a dusty night, until the railroad owner traded her ticket for a marriage proposal. Sarah quoted, smiling at the memory. Sounds like a story. It's our story. He kissed her temple. And it's just beginning. She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't. Together. Together, he promised. As the train whistle blew and the crowd cheered, Sarah thought about the girl she'd been. Desperate. Hopeless. Alone, that girl had made a choice in a storm-battered church, trading survival for possibility. She'd been terrified then. She wasn't anymore. Because she'd learned the truth. Love wasn't about being saved. It was about saving each other, over and over, until you built something strong enough to weather any storm. And they had. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after the train station opening. Sarah was in Jamie's study, their study now, reviewing supply contracts, when Marcus knocked. Mrs. Cross, urgent message from Denver. She took the paper with steady hands. though something in Marcus's expression made her stomach clench. Her eyes scanned the words, once, twice, unable to process them. Board meeting Friday. Vote scheduled on cross removal. Majority backing Thornton for CEO position. Marriage insufficient to maintain confidence. Harrison. Harrison was Jamie's only ally on the board, a Boston banker who'd invested early in the railroad. If he was warning them, the situation was dire. Jamie was 2 days' ride north, inspecting the new junction point. She could send word, but he wouldn't make it back before Friday. And even if he did, what could he do? The board had made their decision. Sarah read the telegram again, fury building in her chest. Marriage insufficient, because she wasn't good enough, because she'd started with nothing, and that stain apparently never washed clean. She thought of the girl who'd collapsed in a church, desperate and starving. That girl would have accepted this as inevitable. Rich men's games she couldn't play. But she wasn't that girl anymore. "Marcus, saddle my horse," she said. "I'm going to Denver." His eyebrows shot up. "Ma'am, that's 3 days hard riding." "Then I'd better leave now." She was already moving, pulling out her riding clothes. "Send word to Jamie, but don't tell him where I've gone. Just that I'm handling business. He'll have my head. I'll have your head if you slow me down." She paused at the door. "Please, Marcus, trust me." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll pack supplies, and I'm sending 2 men with you." She wanted to argue, but recognized the wisdom. "Thank you." The ride to Denver was brutal. They pushed hard, stopping only to rest the horses and snatch a few hours of sleep. Sarah's thighs screamed in protest, her back ached, but she gritted her teeth and kept going. She'd learned to ride for pleasure. Now she learned to ride with purpose. They reached Denver Thursday night, dust-covered and exhausted. Sarah checked into the Oxford Hotel, the best in town, where she knew the railroad board members would be staying. She bathed, put on her finest dress, deep green silk Jamie had bought her for their 6-month anniversary, and pinned her hair up with the silver combs he'd given her for Christmas. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman of means and determination. Good. That's what they needed to see. She found Harrison in the hotel restaurant, dining alone. He looked up as she approached, his weathered face registering shock. "Mrs. Cross, does Jameson know you're here?" "Not yet." She sat without waiting for invitation. "Tell me everything." Harrison glanced around, then leaned forward. "Thornton's been spreading poison for months. Says Jameson's lost focus, that his judgment's compromised by personal matters. Meaning you," he added bluntly. "Claims a woman of your background makes the company look unstable." "My background?" Sarah's voice was ice. "You mean poor." "I'm just telling you what they say." Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "There's more. Thornton's been buying up shares through intermediaries. He now controls enough votes to push Jameson out, with or without the board's official blessing." Sarah's mind raced. How much would it take to block him? Another 15% of shares. But they're not for sale, and even if they were, he named a figure that made her stomach drop. She thought of their accounts. The money Jamie had carefully saved and invested. It would take everything they had, plus loans they might not be able to secure. And there was no guarantee it would work, unless she found another way. "What does Thornton want?" she asked. "Power. Control." Harrison studied her. "Why?" "Because powerful men always want something more than what they claim." She stood. "Which room is his?" "Mrs. Cross, I don't think. Which room? Harrison sighed. Third floor, suite 7. But Sarah, he's dangerous. Don't. I'm more dangerous. She smiled without humor. You'll see. She knocked on Thornton's door at 8 o'clock. He opened it himself, a stocky man in his 50s, with shrewd eyes and a politician's smile. Mrs. Cross, what an unexpected pleasure. Mr. Thornton, we need to talk. He gestured her inside, and she walked past him into a suite twice the size of hers. Documents covered the table, contracts, share certificates, maps of proposed railroad expansions. Impressive operation, she said, studying the papers. You've been planning this for months. I've been preparing for the inevitable. He poured whiskey without asking if she wanted any. Your husband is brilliant but distracted. The railroad needs focused leadership. And you think you're that leader. I know I am. He handed her a glass. Nothing personal, Mrs. Cross. Business. Everything's personal in business. She sipped the whiskey, hiding her grimace at the burn. You want Jamie out because he won't compromise on safety standards. They cut into profits. Thornton's smile thinned. I want efficiency. You want money. She set down the glass. Here's what I know. You've overextended on the Colorado route. 3 loans from different banks, all due within 6 months. You're counting on this takeover to consolidate resources and buy time. His face went carefully blank. Where did you hear that? I read. She gestured at his documents. These aren't as well hidden as you think. And I've learned something working with Jamie. Desperate men make mistakes. Is this a threat? It's an observation. She moved to the window, looking down at the gaslit street. You need this takeover. Jamie doesn't need the CEO position. He just needs to keep building railroads. What's your point? Sarah turned to face him. What if there was a way for you to win without destroying him? What if you got control of the expansion projects and the associated profits, while Jamie maintained his technical oversight and his reputation? Thornton's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. For the next hour, they negotiated. Sarah proposed a restructuring. Thornton would become CEO with full authority over financial decisions, while Jamie became chief engineer with veto power over safety standards and design. The company would split dividends proportionally, with Thornton taking the larger share initially until his loans were repaid. Why would Jameson agree to this? Thornton asked. Because he married me for a board requirement he never cared about. Sarah lied smoothly. The CEO title means nothing to him. The work does. Give him the work and he'll give you the title. It wasn't entirely a lie. Jamie did care more about building than politics. But the sacrifice of position would hurt. She knew it would. She'd deal with that later. And what do you get out of this? Thornton asked suspiciously. My husband's happiness, and proof that poor orphans can play chess with railroad barons. She extended her hand. Do we have a deal? He studied her for a long moment, then shook. Deal, but this presentation comes from me tomorrow. You were never here. Agreed. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you ever call my background or my marriage into question publicly again, I'll make sure every bank in 3 territories knows about your overextension. Are we clear? His jaw tightened. Clear. She left his suite, feeling simultaneously triumphant and sick. She'd saved Jamie's position, technically. But had she betrayed him by negotiating without his knowledge? By trading his authority for stability? She didn't sleep that night. At dawn, she sent a telegram to Marcus. Tell Jamie Denver urgent. Come immediately. Then she went downstairs to wait. He arrived just before the board meeting, his horse lathered, his face frantic. She met him in the lobby, and he swept her into his arms. "What are you doing here? Marcus said business but wouldn't tell me." He pulled back, searching her face. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She told him everything in a rush. The telegram, the vote, her negotiation with Thornton. With each word, his expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something that looked like betrayal. "You negotiated away my position," he said quietly. "I saved your position, your real position, the work you love, without asking me." His hands dropped from her arms. "Sarah, I know you were trying to help, but I should have trusted you to handle it." She felt tears burn, but refused to let them fall. "Jamie, there wasn't time. If I'd waited for you, Thornton would have forced a vote and won. This way, you keep the railroad. You keep the work. I keep half the railroad, half the influence, half the respect." He ran his hands through his hair. "You think I care about a title? But it's not that simple. Without authority, I can't protect the workers, can't enforce standards. You have veto power on safety. I made sure of that. Veto power, Thornton will fight me on every damn time." His voice rose, then broke. "Sarah, I know you meant well, but you undermined me, made me look weak in front of the board." The words hit like a physical blow. "I was trying to save you. I didn't need saving." He closed his eyes. "I needed a partner who trusted me to fight my own battles. Like you trusted me when you married me without knowing me." The words came out sharp, defensive. "You made a decision about both our lives in one night. But when I make a decision to protect what we've built, suddenly I've overstepped?" His eyes opened, and she saw pain there that made her chest ache. "That's not fair." "Neither is this." She blinked hard against tears. "I rode 3 days to get here. I faced Thornton alone. I negotiated the best deal I could with the tools I had. And you're angry because I didn't wait for permission? I'm angry because you didn't wait for me." He grabbed her shoulders. Not hard, but desperate. "We're supposed to be together, Sarah. That means I don't abandon you to face things alone, and you don't abandon me." "I didn't abandon you. I protected you by sacrificing my authority, my choice." He released her, stepping back. "Go slow, Sarah. It hurts." The echo of her own words from their wedding night made her flinch. She'd said them when he was trying to be gentle, trying not to hurt her. Now he was saying them, and she understood. She'd wounded him by denying him agency in his own life. "Jamie, I'm sorry. I need to think." He moved toward the stairs. "The meeting's in an hour. I'll listen to Thornton's proposal, then we'll talk." He walked away, and Sarah stood in the lobby feeling like she was collapsing all over again. She'd been so sure she was doing the right thing, so certain she was strong enough to handle this. Maybe she was still just a scared girl trying to prove she belonged. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Sarah wasn't allowed inside, so she waited in the hotel restaurant, drinking coffee until her hands shook. Finally, Harrison found her. "It's done," he said. "Thornton's CEO, Jameson's chief engineer. The restructuring passed unanimously." "How did Jamie vote?" "He abstained." Harrison sat heavily. "But Mrs. Cross, Sarah," he looked gutted. "Whatever happened between you two, fix it. He needs you." She nodded, not trusting her voice. When Harrison left, she went upstairs to their room and waited. Jamie came in at sunset. He looked exhausted, his shoulders bowed with weight she'd inadvertently added. Without speaking, he went to the window and stared out at Denver's growing skyline. "I'm sorry," Sarah said finally. "You're right. I should have trusted you. And I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't." He didn't turn around. "You rode 3 days alone because you thought I needed saving. That's on me, Sarah. I've been so focused on teaching you about the railroad that I never asked what you needed from me. I need you to tell me when I'm wrong, even when I think I'm helping. I need you to let me fight beside you, not ahead of you." He finally turned, and she saw tears on his face. "We're supposed to be partners, equals. But I keep treating you like you're fragile, and you keep treating me like I need protection. We're both wrong." She crossed the room and took his hands. "So how do we fix it? We start over, right now." He squeezed her fingers. "I'm Jameson Cross. I just lost my title because my wife negotiated without me. And I'm furious and hurt, and also incredibly proud of her for facing down Thornton alone." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm Sarah Cross." He pulled her close, and she buried her face in his chest. "Sarah, I meant what I said. I'm proud of you. Scared of you, a little, but proud. Even though I ruined everything, you didn't ruin anything." He tilted her face up. "You made a call with bad information and good intentions. And honestly, the deal's not terrible. I get to build without dealing with board politics. Thornton gets to feel important. Everyone wins. You're just saying that to make me feel better." "I'm saying it because it's true." He kissed her forehead. "But next time, and Sarah, there will be a next time we face something hard, we face it together. Promise me." "I promise." She kissed him properly, tasting salt from both their tears. "Take me home, Jamie. I'm tired of Denver." They left the next morning, riding side by side. The silence between them was comfortable now, the air cleared by honesty. Sarah kept glancing at Jamie, watching the tension slowly leave his shoulders as they put miles between them and the city. "What are you thinking?" she asked as they stopped to water the horses. "That maybe losing control isn't the worst thing." He helped her down from her saddle. "I've spent 10 years building this railroad with my own hands, making every decision. Maybe it's time to trust other people with some of it. Thornton's not exactly trustworthy. No, but he's predictable." Jamie smiled slightly. "And I have something he doesn't." "What's that?" "A wife who'll ride 3 days and negotiate with sharks to protect what matters." He pulled her close. "I'd rather have you than a CEO title any day." Sarah rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I love you. I love you too, even when you're terrifying." They made it home in 2 days, pushing hard but not recklessly. The house looked like sanctuary after the chaos of Denver. Mrs. Henley had kept it clean, and Marcus had stationed guards just in case. But everything was peaceful. "I want a bath," Sarah groaned, "and food, and sleep for approximately a week." "Sounds perfect." Jamie swung her into his arms, ignoring her squeal of protest, and carried her inside. "But first, we're talking about the baby." She froze. "What about the baby?" "About how you rode 3 days while pregnant because you were too stubborn to wait." He set her down carefully. "Sarah, if anything had happened, it didn't, but it could have." His hands framed her face. "I know you're strong, I know you can handle yourself, but you're carrying our child, and that means you don't take unnecessary risks." Says the man who inspects bridges while they're being built. "That's different." "It's not different." She pulled away. "Jamie, I won't become some delicate thing you keep in a glass case. Yes, I'm pregnant. That doesn't make me helpless." I never said helpless. You're implying it. She paced the room. This is what I was afraid of. That marriage would mean losing myself, becoming just an extension of you. He caught her arm, stopping her movement. Is that really what you think this is? Isn't it? She met his eyes. You say you want a partner, but the moment I act independently, you're angry. The moment I'm pregnant, you want me wrapped in cotton wool. When do I get to just be Sarah? You're always Sarah. His voice was fierce. Strong, stubborn, brilliant Sarah. But being partners means we protect each other. You protected me in Denver. Recklessly, maybe. But you protected me. Now I'm protecting you. That's not control. That's love. The fight drained out of her. I'm scared, she whispered, of losing myself, of becoming someone I don't recognize. Then let me promise you something. He took her hands. No matter what happens, pregnancy, parenthood, whatever comes, you will always be the woman who walked into a hotel and demanded conditions for her marriage. The woman who faced Thornton alone. The woman who chooses to fight. I fell in love with your strength, Sarah. I'd never ask you to diminish it. Even when it scares you? Especially then. He smiled. Besides, our kid's going to need one of us to be sensible. Might as well be me. She laughed, the tension finally breaking. You're not sensible. You married a stranger. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her softly. Now how about that bath? I'll join you if you want company. Always, she murmured against his mouth. They settled back into routine, but everything felt different. Jamie started spending more time at home, delegating travel to his assistants. Sarah threw herself into learning the engineering side of the railroad, poring over blueprints and calculations until she could spot structural problems as quickly as Jamie could. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sarah's belly swelled, and she discovered a fierce protectiveness she'd never felt before. This child, their child, would never know hunger or fear or desperation. She'd make sure of it. 4 months after Denver, Jamie came home early with news. Thornton's proposing a new route, straight through Blackwater Canyon. Sarah looked up from the blueprint she'd been studying. That's impossible. The canyon's too narrow, the grade too steep. That's what I said. But Thornton's convinced it'll save 6 months of construction time and cut costs by 30%. It'll also kill workers. Sarah stood, moving to the wall map. Look at this topography. One landslide and the whole crew's buried. We can't do it. I know, but Thornton's pushing hard, says we're overcautious. Jamie's jaw tightened. He's calling for a vote tomorrow. Then we fight him. Sarah traced the canyon route with her finger. We present alternatives. Show him the risks. Make him see reason. Sarah, he doesn't want reason. He wants profits. Then we make him understand that dead workers aren't profitable. She turned to Jamie. How many board members will listen? Harrison, definitely. Maybe 2 others if we present a compelling case. Then we make it compelling. She grabbed paper and began sketching. We need numbers, projections, cost analyses of the alternative routes. And we need testimony from engineers who've worked in similar conditions. They worked through the night, building their case with the precision of a legal argument. Sarah's pregnancy made her tire easily, but she pushed through, sustained by coffee and determination. By dawn, they had a presentation that covered every angle: safety, cost, timeline, alternative routes. The meeting was held at the local courthouse, and for the first time, Sarah attended. Thornton tried to block her entrance, but Jamie simply took her hand and walked past him. She's chief engineer's wife and my business partner, Jamie said flatly. She stays. Thornton's face reddened, but he didn't argue. The other board members looked surprised, but accepting. Sarah sat beside Jamie, her hands folded over her pregnant belly, and met every gaze without flinching. When Thornton presented the Blackwater Canyon route, Sarah listened carefully. He was persuasive, she'd give him that. He made it sound almost reasonable, a calculated risk with massive reward. Then Jamie stood to present their counter-proposal. He was brilliant, methodical, precise, passionate without being emotional. He walked the board through every risk factor, showed them the alternative routes with better safety margins and only slightly longer timelines. He cited previous disasters in similar terrain, named companies that had gone bankrupt from worker deaths and lawsuits. When he finished, Harrison spoke up. "These alternatives seem sound. Why are we even considering Blackwater?" "Because Cross is letting caution override ambition," Thornton said. "Gentlemen, the railroad business requires risk. We can't grow if we're paralyzed by worst-case scenarios." "You call 15 worker deaths a worst-case scenario?" Sarah's voice cut through the room before she could stop herself. Every eye turned to her. Jamie touched her hand in warning, but she stood. "I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to speak, but I can't stay silent." "Mrs. Cross," Thornton began. "I started with nothing," she continued, her voice steady. "I know what it's like to be expendable, to be someone powerful people don't see. And I'm telling you, the men who will work that canyon, they're not numbers on a cost analysis. They're human beings with families, with children who'll grow up without fathers if you choose profit over safety." "This is highly irregular," one board member sputtered. "So is building a railroad through impossible terrain because you're too proud to admit a route is flawed." Sarah looked directly at Thornton. "You said Jamie lets caution override ambition. I say he lets humanity override greed. And that's why people follow him. That's why workers trust him. That's why this railroad succeeds, because people matter more than margins." The room fell silent. Thornton's face was white with fury, but Sarah didn't back down. Finally, Harrison cleared his throat. "I move to table the Blackwater Canyon proposal, pending further engineering analysis. All in favor?" 4 hands went up, enough to carry the motion. Thornton's jaw worked, but he said nothing as the vote passed. Outside the courthouse, Jamie pulled Sarah aside. "That was reckless." "I know. And brilliant. I know that too." She smiled tiredly. "I'm sorry I spoke out of turn." "Don't apologize." He kissed her forehead. "You said what I couldn't because of politics. You reminded them why we're building this railroad in the first place. To move civilization forward," Sarah quoted his words from their first meeting. "To give people opportunity," he corrected softly, "including the men who do the actual building." That night, Sarah went into labor, 3 weeks early. Jamie paced outside the bedroom while Mrs. Henley and the doctor attended her. Every scream made him flinch, made him want to break down the door and demand they fix whatever was causing her pain. Finally, after 8 hours that felt like 8 years, a baby's cry pierced the night. Mrs. Henley emerged, smiling. "A girl, strong lungs, healthy, and Sarah wants you." Jamie practically ran into the room. Sarah lay propped against pillows, sweaty and exhausted, and more beautiful than he'd ever seen her. In her arms, wrapped in a blanket, was a tiny red-faced creature with dark hair and a furious expression. "She's mad she had to be born," Sarah said, laughing through tears. "Already stubborn like her mother." Jamie sat carefully on the bed, afraid to touch something so small and perfect. "She's beautiful. She's ours. Sarah guided his hands to hold the baby. Jamie, meet Catherine. Catherine, meet your father. Catherine opened her eyes, gray, like his, and seemed to study him with surprising intensity. Something in Jamie's chest cracked open, a fierce protectiveness unlike anything he'd felt before. "Hello, Catherine," he whispered. "I'm going to make sure you never know hunger or fear. I promise." "We're going to make sure," Sarah corrected, her hand covering his. Together, he looked at his wife, this woman who'd entered his life desperate and afraid, and had become his partner, his equal, his everything, and felt tears slide down his face. Together, he agreed. That night, with his wife and daughters sleeping beside him, Jamie understood something profound. He'd thought he was building a railroad, building an empire, building a legacy. But the truth was simpler and more important. He was building a family, and nothing, not titles, not wealth, not power, mattered more than that. 3 years passed in a blur of construction, negotiations, and the chaos of raising a toddler who inherited her mother's determination and her father's stubbornness. Catherine took her first steps at 9 months, said her first word at 10. More, naturally, and by age 2 could identify every type of railroad car by sight. The railroad flourished under the dual leadership. Thornton handled finances and board politics, while Jamie oversaw construction and safety. It wasn't perfect. They still clashed regularly, but it worked. The company expanded into 4 territories, and the Cross name became synonymous with quality and worker protection. Sarah discovered she had a talent for contract negotiation. She started handling supplier agreements, then labor contracts, then acquisitions. By Catherine's 3rd birthday, Sarah was officially on the company payroll as Director of Operations, with her own office and staff. Who would have thought? Mrs. Henley said one afternoon, watching Sarah review contracts at her desk, while Catherine played with toy trains on the floor. "The girl who came here with nothing." "I had something," Sarah corrected quietly. "I just didn't know it yet." But success bred new challenges. That spring, word came that Thornton had been buying shares again. Not enough to take control, but enough to make his intentions clear. He wanted Jamie out entirely, and he was willing to wait for the right moment. "He's never forgiven you for the Blackwater victory," Harrison warned during a visit, or for Sarah speaking up. "He sees her as the real threat." "He's right to," Jamie said, not bothering to hide his pride. "She's smarter than both of us." But the threat was real, and this time they couldn't negotiate their way out. Thornton had spent 3 years building alliances and gathering power. If they didn't act soon, they'd lose everything. "We need to buy him out," Sarah said one night after Catherine was asleep. "Offer him a premium on his shares and force him out before he forces us." "With what money?" Jamie rubbed his face. "We'd need to liquidate everything, the house, our personal investments, probably take loans we can't afford." "Then we do it." Sarah's voice was firm. "We risk everything again, just like we did at the beginning." "Sarah, we have Catherine now. We can't let fear make us weak." She took his hands. "Jamie, we've built something incredible. A company that treats workers like people, that values safety over speed. If Thornton takes over, he'll undo all of it. Men will die to pad his profits." "I know, but asking you to risk our home, our security, you're not asking. I'm telling you." She stood, began pacing. "I came to this country with nothing. Lost it all when my mother died. Built it back with you. If I have to start over again, so be it. But I won't let someone like Thornton win because we were too scared to fight. Jamie watched her pace. This woman who'd been terrified of losing herself in marriage, but had instead become more herself than ever. You're incredible. I'm stubborn. That too. He stood, caught her in mid-pace, and kissed her. Let's do it. Let's bet everything on ourselves one more time. Over the next month, they worked in secret, sold investments, mortgaged the house, called in every favor and loan they were owed. Harrison helped arrange financing, though he warned them repeatedly that they were taking an enormous risk. If this fails, you'll lose everything, he said bluntly. If we do nothing, we'll lose everything anyway, Sarah replied. At least this way, we go down fighting. They approached Thornton with their offer. $200,000 for his shares, 30% above market value. It would give them majority control and end his influence permanently. Thornton laughed in their faces. You think I'd sell to you? He leaned back in his chair. Sarah, I've spent 3 years waiting for this. I'm not selling. I'm taking. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. What if we go to the other shareholders? Jamie asked. Tell them about your financial irregularities? What irregularities? Thornton's smile was sharp. You have no proof of wrongdoing, because there is none. I've been careful. Sarah felt defeat rising like bile. They'd gambled everything, and it wasn't enough. Then Catherine's voice echoed in her memory. More, always asking for more, never satisfied with what she had. Always pushing boundaries, testing limits. What if we offer you something better than money? Sarah said slowly. Jamie looked at her sharply. Thornton raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. You want control of this company because you think it'll make you powerful, respected. Sarah leaned forward. But you'll always be the man who stole it from Jameson Cross, the villain in the story. I can live with that. Can you? Because I'm offering you a different story. She pulled a document from her bag, something she'd prepared as a desperate backup plan. We're starting a new venture, a luxury passenger line running from Denver to San Francisco. First-class accommodations, dining cars, sleeping berths. The future of rail travel. Thornton's eyes flickered with interest. What's your point? You founded it. You're the visionary who saw the future of the industry. You get 51% ownership, complete control, and all the credit. She slid the document across. All you have to do is sell us your shares in the freight company. You'd give up a luxury line to keep freight? Thornton looked skeptical. Freight is what we know, what we're good at. Sarah met his gaze. And luxury is what you've always wanted. Prestige, society connections, your name in newspapers as an innovator, not a usurper. Jamie's hand found hers under the table, squeezing. He understood what she was offering. Their backup plan, their safety net, their next big venture. She was trading their future for their present. Thornton studied the document. This is legitimate? You have funding? We have investors ready to commit once we have a founder who brings credibility. Sarah lied smoothly. They had one potential investor who'd expressed vague interest. You'd be that founder. For a long moment, no one spoke. Sarah could hear her heartbeat, feel Jamie's pulse racing against her palm. Everything balanced on this moment. Fine, Thornton said finally. I'll sell, but I want the transfer completed within a week. They shook hands, and Sarah felt like she might collapse from relief. Outside Thornton's office, Jamie pulled her into an alcove. We just gave away our future, he said quietly. No, we secured it. She cupped his face. Jamie, we'll build another venture. We always do. But the freight company is our heart. It's where we've made real change. I couldn't let that go. Even if it means starting over? We've started over before. She kissed him. We're good at it. The share transfer happened 3 days later. When the papers were signed and Orton was gone, Jamie and Sarah stood in their office, truly their office now, and looked at the maps covering the walls. We own a railroad, Jamie said wonderingly. We own a railroad, Sarah repeated, then laughed. We're also completely broke and just promised to found a luxury line we have no idea how to build. Details. He pulled her close. We'll figure it out. We always do. That night, they celebrated with Catherine, who didn't understand what was happening, but loved the rare treat of staying up late. Sarah watched Jamie swing their daughter around the room, both of them laughing, and felt a peace she'd never known before. She'd started with nothing, lost everything, built it back with determination and desperation and love, lost it again, this time by choice, and she'd do it all again tomorrow if she had to, because she'd learned the real truth. Security didn't come from money or property or titles. It came from knowing who you were and what you'd fight for. It came from partnership. It came from love. "Mama, why are you crying?" Catherine asked, suddenly serious. "Happy tears, sweetheart." Sarah wiped her eyes. "Just happy tears. Don't be sad happy. Be regular happy," Catherine demanded. "Okay," Sarah laughed. "I'll be regular happy." She caught Jamie's eye over their daughter's head. He smiled, that soft, private smile that was only for her, and mouthed, "Together." "Together," she mouthed back. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 6 months later, Sarah stood on a platform watching the first luxury passenger train depart for San Francisco. Thornton posed for photographs, basking in the attention, taking credit for the vision and execution. Sarah didn't mind. She and Jamie had quietly secured the contracts for freight transport along the same route, ensuring their company would prosper whether the luxury line succeeded or failed. They'd also convinced 3 of Thornton's investors to back a separate hotel venture along the railway, a project that would bring in steady income for years. "He has no idea, does he?" Harrison murmured beside her. "That we're making more money from his venture than he is?" Sarah smiled. "Not a clue. And we'll keep it that way. You've become quite ruthless, Mrs. Cross. I learned from the best." She gestured to where Jamie was inspecting a freight car. Catherine perched on his shoulders, pointing out rivets. "My husband taught me that business is war by other means, and my daughter taught me that more is always an acceptable answer." Harrison laughed. "That child is going to run this whole operation someday." "I hope so." Sarah watched Catherine gesture imperiously at something, Jamie obligingly moving closer so she could touch it. "She'll be better at it than either of us." She walked over to her family, and Catherine immediately reached for her. "Mama, Papa says this car goes all the way to the ocean." "It does, sweetheart. Can we go? Please, please, please?" "Someday," Sarah promised. "When you're bigger." "I'm big now." "Bigger," Jamie corrected, swinging her down. "Your mama and I have work to do first." Catherine pouted, but didn't argue. At 3, she already understood that work came first, not because her parents loved it more, but because the work made everything else possible. Later, after Catherine was in bed, Sarah and Jamie sat on their porch watching the stars. They'd kept the house, barely, through careful budget management and the new contracts. It wasn't as secure as before, but it was theirs. "Do you ever regret it?" Jamie asked. "Marrying me? All the chaos that came with it?" Sarah thought about the question seriously. The hunger, the fear, the desperate gambles and brutal compromises. The time she'd been so scared she could barely breathe. The time she'd been so angry she wanted to scream. "No," she said finally. "Not for a second. Do you?" "Never." He pulled her close. "Even when you're terrifying, I'd choose you every time." "I'm not terrifying." "You negotiated with Thornton twice and won both times. You're absolutely terrifying." She laughed, then sobered. "Jamie, what if we fail? The luxury line might not work. We might lose everything again. Then we start over, again." He kissed her temple. "Sarah, I've lost and rebuilt this company twice. Once before I met you, once with you. If it happens a third time, we'll do it together. That's all that matters." "Together," she whispered. "Always." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, one of their trains, carrying freight to somewhere new. The sound made Sarah smile. She'd sought shelter in a church on a dusty night, desperate and afraid. A stranger had offered her a choice: freedom or partnership, safety or risk. She'd chosen risk, and it had given her everything. Not the house or the railroad or the money, though those mattered, but the man beside her, the daughter sleeping inside, the life they'd built from nothing but determination and hope. Those were the real treasures. "I love you," she said quietly. "I love you too." Jamie's arm tightened around her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes, for staying, for fighting beside me." He paused. "For teaching me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up." "You taught me that," Sarah protested. "We taught each other." He stood, pulled her up. "Come on, let's go to bed. Tomorrow starts a new chapter." "Another one?" "Always another one." He grinned. "That's the adventure, Sarah. There's always more." More, Catherine's favorite word. The Cross family motto, apparently. Sarah took Jamie's hand and let him lead her inside, into their imperfect, chaotic, beautiful life. They'd started with nothing and built something extraordinary. They'd lost it and rebuilt it. They'd gamble and risk and fight and love. And whatever came next, they'd face it, the only way they knew how, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and Jamie's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.